Okay. Martina Cardamone studies foreign and modern languages and literatures at the University of Calabria. In December 2020, she graduated in modern foreign languages and cultures with a thesis of German literature titled The Disguises of Mephistopheles in Faust, Part 1 by Goethe. Her work examined all the masks and disguises used by Mephistopheles, outlining in specific the main role and the ambivalent nature of this character within Goethe's masterpiece. So the title of her presentation is Androgyny and Subversion, Exploring Masculinity in Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights.
So thank you for your introduction and hello everyone. Today my presentation is going to address how masculinities were performed and challenged in the Victorian novels Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. And through the leading male heroes of these works, so namely Rochester and Heathcliff, these novels offer a brand new representation of masculinity within literary fiction. And in fact, this presentation is going to analyze how androgynous identities are constructed in these works, and how this combination of feminine and masculine traits subverts and challenges the cultural Victorian framework and its established gender norms. So first of all, I would like to briefly introduce a definition of androgyny. And sorry, okay, according to the Collins English Dictionary, androgyny is literally the state of being neither distinctly masculine nor distinctly feminine, or being partly masculine and partly feminine. And as you can see, the word itself alludes to a combination between feminine traits and masculine ones. And in fact, its etymology comes from ancient Greek, and it unites andros, meaning male, and gune, meaning woman. And after these definitions, we can surely affirm that androgyny ascribes a state of ambiguity, or using Omi Baba words, an in-between space of identity. And this combination of femininity and masculinity becomes a common theme in literary fiction that generally aims to challenge and subvert the established gender norms. And with this theoretical background on the definition of androgyny, we can now proceed to analyze this concept as a mean of subversion in the novels. So the novels that we're going to analyze are Jane Eyre, written by Charlotte Bronte, and we're going to focus on Rochester. And on the other hand, we have Wuthering Heights, written by Emily Bronte, and in this case, we're going to focus on the figure of Heathcliff. So, starting from Jane Eyre, as Wilson stated in his work, the Bronte sisters fuse, and I am quoting, androgynous characteristics to obtain the image of the so-called true hero. However, it is especially Charlotte Bronte who evolves, and I'm quoting again, an ideal of union in which both partners alternate between masculine or controlling and feminine or responsive roles. And the main expression of this alternating between masculine and feminine traits in Jane Eyre is surely Edward Fairfax Rochester. And Rochester's role in the novel will be as being the typical house patriarch, showing at first glance no signs of feminine traits. And starting to analyze Rochester's description, before appearing in the plot, is described only in accordance with his public role and nothing more. In fact, to Jane's repeated question to know a glimpse more on her master's character, Mrs. Fairfax will reductively respond, and I'm quoting directly from the text, is a very good master. And as Jane will later conclude, and I'm quoting again, Mr. Rochester was Mr. Rochester in her eyes, a gentleman, a landed proprietor, nothing more. And this depiction will even go further where Rochester's secret unfolds, that is, his imprisoned Creole wife Bertha Mason. And with Bertha, Rochester's role will be that of a showman, exhibiting Bertha's body as a subject or a monster, using the rhetoric of a freak show to introduce her as his bride. And this picture of a gentleman seems to portray a kind of masculinity that does not go beyond its stereotypical representation as a patriarch, or in this case as an exhibitor or showman. So going forward, we can now start to analyze Rochester as an androgyny, And in fact, depicting Rochester only in accordance with his role as a patriarch or as a Byronic wrong man still remains reductive. And in fact, his character shows a convergence of traits that strongly challenge and seize his over-aggressive masculinity. And in all Charlotte Bronte's novel, and I'm quoting Wilson, the divine hermaphrodite replaces the virile hero as a focus of erotic interest. And in this regard, we're going to analyze three episodes that mark Rochester's androgynous being, that are when Rochester and Jane meet for the first time in chapter 12, then we have his disguise as a gypsy woman in chapter 19, and lastly, at the end of the novel, we're going to analyze his fall as a master. So, starting from Rochester's meeting with Jane, in this scene, Rochester's first depiction is strongly romanticized. And the first appears, in fact, as the very essence of patriarchal energy, according to Gilbert and Gubar. However, this mythical portrait is successfully disrupted by Rochester's fall on ice, and it will cry out, in fact, what the douche is to do now, and I'm quoting. And this first episode partly marks the fall of his vigorous masculinity, so to speak. And in fact, as Godfrey has observed, Rochester's introduction in the novel fails to satisfy the heroic ideal masculinity, requiring Jane's help and defining in this way a dependent masculinity. So, going forward, his outstanding feminist streak will even be more evident when Rochester disguises himself as a gypsy woman who claims to tell Jane's fortune in chapter 19. And with this travestite performance, the text explores, and I'm quoting again Godfrey, the transcendence and the stability of gender identities that populate the complex subtext of the novel. And in this regard, Rochester takes the trappings of femininity and plays a so-called gender game to prompt Jane to divulge her secrets. And as Jane herself will later accuse him, and I'm quoting the text, in short, I believe you have been trying to draw me out or in. You have been talking nonsense in order to make me talk nonsense. And lastly, Rochester's androgynous self will also find expression at the end of the novel. And Bertha, escaping her prison, causes a fire that brings ruination to Thornfield and her master. And her fire, in fact, blinds and disfigures Rochester, symbolically burning away his colonial wealth and his power as a male host, according to Chen. And several critics have interpreted this blinding of Rochester as a symbolic castration. And in fact, Bertha's revenge reduces him to a powerlessness position of female weakness, confined to his house and dependent on others, according to Wyatt. And in this regard, there is a clear reversal of roles, in which his disfigured and blinded body becomes the freak or the animal, and just like Bertha's starting point and representation in general in the novel. And in this regard, Rochester, deprived of his original rebellious energy and virility, permits at the end of the novel a subversion of the power relation between master and governess. In fact, Bronte permits Jane to become the authoritative exhibitor and his mistress. And if roles are subverted and the masculine or authoritative role is embodied by Jane, then in this regard, Rochester is increasingly feminized in his role as older husband. However, the text does not fully escape from the logic of patriarchal oppression. In fact, its structure is not disrupted but only subverted, restating a new power relation or hierarchy. So, going forward, we can now start to analyze Wuthering Heights' leading male hero, that is Heathcliff. And Heathcliff is surely one of the most unconventional male heroes ever created within literary fiction. And his shadowy origins are surely one of his main features, and the structure of the novel itself builds on ambiguities and indeterminacy. Heathcliff, however, that is the Byronic hero of the story, enters the plot just like a ghost. And from the start, he is described by Mr. Henshaw as being, and I'm quoting, dark almost if he came from the devil. So, one needs to remark in this regard is surely this Gothic demonic depiction of Heathcliff that perhaps anticipates his demonic nature in the second part of the novel. In fact, in the second volume of the text, Isabella will ask, and I'm quoting again directly from the text, is Mr. Heathcliff a man? If so, is he mad? And if not, is he a devil? And also Nellie will ask, is he a ghoul or a vampire? I mused. And these pending questions show Emily Bronte's awareness of having created a noble being that unifies human and animal traits, constructing a new definition of the demonic according to Gilbert and Gubar. And moving forward from Heathcliff's image as a Byronic satanic hero or also as a gypsy, another element that constructs his character is surely his androgynous self. In fact, if the reader is at first misled by Heathcliff's description after his mysterious appearance, that is, I'm quoting, he had grown a tall, athletic, well-formed man, beside whom my master seemed quite slender and youthful. However, in his figure there is also a convergence of feminine traits, defining in this way an androgynous identity. In fact, Heathcliff, according to Gilbert and Gubar, represents some sort of feminized alternative version of masculinity. And one of the most evident expressions of Heathcliff androgyny is surely his complex relationship with Catherine Earnshaw, his lover. In fact, as several critics have demonstrated, Heathcliff's union with Catherine originates a perfect androgyny. And this theory is confirmed by what Catherine herself states in her famous self-naming, I am Heathcliff, and furthermore, as she will later tell Nellie, and I'm quoting again, Heathcliff is from more myself than I am. And these statements, alongside with the strict connection between these two characters in the novel, originate the mythos of Catherine and Heathcliff androgynous oneness, with which the text explores and transgresses gender roles. And this statement of mythical androgyny becomes even clearer when also Heathcliff expresses his own identification with Cathy, that is, Heathcliff's lament after her death, and I'm quoting again the text. Oh God, it is unanswerable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. And it is not a case, in fact, that Heathcliff, after his lover's death becomes an empty vessel or the soulless body of a vanished passion, and I'm quoting Gilbert and Gubar in this case. And Heathcliff, having lost the other side of his soul, is doomed to a dreadful existence only made of revenge, and his conscience had turned his heart into an earthly hell, as Nellie will later express in the text. And just like Heathcliff loses his wholeness after his lover's death, also Cathy, when she is separated from her other half, descends into madness and results into her decline, fragmentation, and death. So, in conclusion, this mythical androgyny is doomed to not find its unity. They are fated for eternity, just like Plato's myth, for example, to try to restore the mythical oneness again. Cathy and Heathcliff never unite, if not after death, and they will never become the perfect androgyny. And as Stephen Vine also concludes, mythical androgyny can be considered as dismantled in this text. However, Cathy's apparitions to Heathcliff just before his death symbolize perhaps an attempt to reconcile with her lover. And the result of these ghost-like apparitions, or vivid visions, is bringing Heathcliff to madness till he lastly meets his fate, constantly muttering Catherine's name and relentlessly being haunted by her spirit. And in fact, when Nellie sees Heathcliff being uncommonly animated, she asks if he had heard good news. And after Nellie's insistence, he will respond, and I'm quoting, last night I was on the threshold of hell. Today I am within sight of my heaven. I have my eyes on it. Hardly 3 feet to sever me. But to conclude, in the last pages of the novel, after Heathcliff's death, a frightened little boy states he had seen, and I'm quoting again, Heathcliff and a woman yonder under a knob. So, in conclusion, it is after death, perhaps suggests Bronte, that the so-called perfect androgyny can be finally restored. So, thank you for your attention, and these are the references that I have used. Thank you.